Taylor, it's so good to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so why is curtailing shipping emissions just so important?
So look at what you're wearing. If you're watching at home, look at, the phone in your hands, the appliances in your kitchen, your car. Everything has traveled to you on a ship. 90% of goods have traveled on a ship at some point in their journey. And nearly 100% of ships that are on the water today are powered by fossil fuels. So it's a sector that is the backbone of our global economy and has been hidden for a really long time. It's not, front page news. It wasn't until, the ship got stuck in the Suez Canal and during the COVID pandemic when we saw ships, off the coast of major ports trying to come in. So it's been a sector that hasn't had a technological revolution since the late 1800s when we switched from wind to fossil fuels. And it hasn't needed to shift because there hasn't really been public pressure or policy to force it to shift. And so shipping represents right now about 3% of global emissions, but as opposed to some other sectors, emissions are actually rising in shipping. And as other sectors decarbonize, its responsibility, its share of the global emissions pie will continue to rise. It's predicted that it can be up to 10% of global emissions in some scenarios in the next couple of decades. And we cannot collectively as a global society accomplish our climate goals under the Paris Agreement if shipping doesn't decarbonize.
Totally makes sense. And so tell me about your efforts with the Aspen Institute to really reduce those emissions.
Yeah, coalitions are so important in this space because it's been behind the scenes for so long, and there's huge collective action problems across the sector. There's disconnected value chains. It's hard to bring people together to focus on this sector. But we have been approaching it from the side of the customers of maritime shipping services, which are the major companies that you and I know and buy from every day. Amazon, IKEA, Electrolux, Lululemon, Patagonia, REI. They, in this scenario, are the customers. So our coalition is almost testing the old adage that the customer is always right. These are companies that have their own really ambitious climate commitments that they cannot reach if their goods that they supply to us are continuing to rely on transport by fossil fuel powered ships. So we have brought all these companies together to send a collective demand signal through many different avenues to the shipping sector that they want zero emission shipping solutions and they want them now coming up here soon. So it's been, and why the companies need to come together is because even the biggest of them represents only a tiny drop in the bucket of global shipping. So they can't do this alone. It's not like they can go off and purchase renewable energy or go, try to decarbonize their own kind of systems, that they alone are tiny fish in this big global pond. So we're bringing them together to really show ambition and move towards action.
When can these companies expect to have a meaningful reduction in the ships that they're shipping their cargo on?
So this is called the hard to abate sector. And maritime is one, aviation, steel, heavy trucking, all of those are called hard to abate. And that's because they require high level of investments over long periods of time to transition. So the reason why the action that cargo owners are taking this decade is so important is because we need to start building the momentum to deliver these changes and to deliver a new market, really, for zero-emission shipping services that doesn't exist currently. The ships that are on the water today will last 20, 30, 40 years. There's a ship on the Great Lakes that still runs on coal. It's not one of the big container ships, but it just kind of shows these are big investments that, to buy a new ship, to get into a shipyard, to do all of that. And so we're kind of, I think of it as like a snowball effect. And so there are some things that cargo owners can and are doing in the near term to lower their emissions. There's efficiency measures that can be taken. But the switch to new fuels is going to take more time. And so what we're working on our initiative is called COZEV, Cargo Owners for Zero Emission Vessels. And then within that group of cargo owners, we have a buyers alliance that I could talk more about, that we're trying to put companies' money where their mouth is and try to invest in advance in order to bring these solutions to the market closer than would be otherwise. In new markets, there's an S curve that happens. It happens. It's a really famous, common thing, and so we're in the kind of upward phase where we're trying to hit market penetration. We're trying to get the S curve to grow until it can become the norm. So our companies, we want any company, not just the ones working with us, to be able to purchase zero emission shipping solutions by 2040 for any and all of the cargo that they transport. So that's kind of our collective goal, and then we're working on a lot of things to get us there.
Okay, that's just 16 years away.
I know, and that's the really scary thing. And so, because we're going to need to order new ships, we need to bunker, which is fueling ships. It has to be done in a totally new and different way. We have to build a new value chain, build new markets. The way that we've done things has to shift, and all of the players along the value chain have to work together. Cargo owners hadn't really been involved in any substantial way before our coalition, and so I'm really glad that we're able to kind of bring their voices to the market and give them more negotiating power with the rest of the value chain that they didn't have before.
What are some of these zero emission fuels?
The zero emission future for shipping will have multiple fuel types. Right now, shipping has been relying on the sludge at the bottom of the barrel, basically, and that's why it's cheap. We've had globalization, and it's been able to kind of bring products to us cheaper than we would expect, because they've been using the dirtiest fuel that's out there. As we move forward, though, depending on the size of the ship, where it is, what it does, the maritime sector is so diverse that the biggest ships that cross the biggest oceans will likely use some hydrogen-derived fuels going forward. But for ferries or for things with shorter trips, those can be electrified. And so it's really going to be a mix of fuels. We're not going to have one fuel type, and so that's why it's so important, though, to all of the fuels that will rely on renewable energy as their feedstock to be the most green, the most sustainable they can be. So we need to increase renewable energy, and that can help us create all the fuels that we need going forward for the shipping sector. But hydrogen derived are going to be the most powerful. They have the same or similar kind of strength to fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are really efficient. That they have a lot of energy, and so that's one of the struggles with the new fuels, is there's different energy densities, and how you power these, how we fuel ships has to be different. The engine types have to be different. That literally every single piece of the way our value chain works now might have to shift, and it's just slow processes going all together.
What a challenge.
It's a big challenge, but we've seen so much movement even over the past 3 years that it's been really heartening. The IMO, the International Maritime Organization, who's the global regulator of maritime shipping, we're lucky in that we have a global regulator for shipping, that when they act, things can change. And they just last year updated their greenhouse gas strategy that they have targets for 2030 and 2040. They're right now, I have a colleague that's in London right now at the meetings to work on the negotiations and what these midterm measures are going to look like. How are we going to, as a globe, transition? Because it's a global problem. And it's also hyper-local. And that's what's so interesting about shipping, that, the port that's here in Miami, that's related to the entire global supply chain. But then the meetings that are happening at the IMO in London right now, those are also just as relevant. And so that's the fascinating thing, and that keeps shipping interesting for me, at least, is that it's at the same time hyper-local and hyper-global.
Well, what are the major challenges to getting companies on board, as it were?
You are now part of the Fellowship of Shipping Puns that are very common, that they sneak into every email I write, to every talk I give. So welcome to the club.
Ahoy.
Ahoy. There's a lot of challenges, and some of the major ones that we've been working to overcome, the first of which is just education, that we have had to we've had to kind of be a crutch for some companies and educate them on this sector and what some of the solutions are. And it makes total sense. There's some big global companies, that have huge sustainability teams and they can devote time and resources to this. Other times we meet companies and it's one person who can spend 0.1% of their time on this topic. And it's not that companies don't want to work on this, they just don't have the time and resources. So we've been acting through COSEV and through ZEMBA, the Zero Emission Maritime Buyers Alliance. We've been acting as kind of supplemental staff almost, or resources, and trying to get them educated and aware on this topic, because other than us, they get a lot of information from the carriers, so which people will know, maybe Maersk, and there's CMA, these are O&E, there's these big global carriers, and they're trying to sell the companies something, so they're usually their proprietary business solutions. So we can act as kind of an honest broker and provide some of that information to get them activated and interested. There's also no regulation requiring companies to act. And the solutions, these zero emission solutions that we've been talking about, are going to cost more. So companies who do this want to be first movers, that they are going, we call it the high hanging fruit of sustainability. It's not the low hanging fruit where you can just, like I said, buy renewable energy or, switch your fleet to zero emission cars. This is tough stuff. It's technical stuff. And we want companies to succeed. We have to meet them where they are. And that's the main thing that we've been able to, I think, contribute, is getting them interested, getting them activated, and helping them make the argument internally as why they should care about maritime, especially because when it comes to even their own corporate emissions, maritime is small. That they can, when you're looking at how you spend $1 in the sustainability budget, it's cheaper and you can probably abate more carbon doing it in a different sector. But that's why we have to come together, and we're hoping to, gain some economies of scale and gain efficiencies by working together so that we can get them good prices on zero emission shipping services, which is what we're doing through ZEMBA and in our advanced market commitments. And it's not easy, but it's been so heartening to find companies that want to work on this and do care about it. And I was surprised when we first started working on this. I didn't necessarily know if companies would care or want to care, but we actually launched ZEMBA here at AIC last year. We had 3 members. This year we're at almost 30, and it's companies from all over the world. So it's been really cool to see that part especially grow over the last year.
Well, let's say I'm a company and I'm on the fence about joining this coalition. What would you say to me?
Through ZEMBA, our main selling points are that what we do through ZEMBA is we're doing advanced market commitments for zero emission shipping services, because like I said, these are going to take longer to get onto the market. We're trying to get companies to pay now to give the rest of the value chain time and certainty to bring these solutions to the market that they might not have done ever, or at least on the time frame that we want them to. So we launched an RFP, a request for proposals, last year, and went to market and said, show us what you have. We have a zero emission fuel definition, we have life cycle analysis guidance, and said, can you meet this and give us your best pricing? So what we can tell companies is that we can get you the best pricing on the highest emission reduction shipping services on the fastest time frame. And companies are going to be able to have emissions reductions starting next year. And we'll also launch another tender later this year for looking a little bit further out to really incentivize some of the e-fuels, those renewable energy derived fuels that we think will be the biggest drivers of change and the biggest emissions reductions and the most scalable over time. So we do all the hard work and all the dirty work for that process in particular. So if companies want to join ZEMBA, that we make it easy. We do all the negotiation, we do all the verification, we do all of that for them and give them a solution that they can then bring to their leaders, their boards, and say, let's invest in this, let's work with some of the other biggest companies in the world and move this forward. So that's one of the big benefits, I think, with ZEMBA in particular. The education is also a big part of it, like I was saying, and the community among other companies that I think our companies get a lot of value out of knowing they're not alone in all of this. And so I like seeing them on panels and they chat on calls about this issue, but then others too. And it's so much about, all of this is about the people. that shipping decarbonization is a people problem. We have the technologies, they just have to be scaled and the prices have to come down. And that involves private sector action, but also public sector action. The companies like being first movers, that it's hard, but we are trying to create a light at the end of the tunnel where they don't have to be first movers forever. And they shouldn't have to be. They're okay paying more than their competitors for a little bit. And, they get competitive advantage. They can get, a good leadership, PR boost, but they shouldn't have to. And my goal for our work, and we tell people this, there's no membership fee. We don't charge companies anything to work with us too. And our goal is to put ourselves out of business. We don't want this coalition to exist forever. We want any company, like I said, to be able to go to the market and buy zero emission shipping solutions on their own. And then we're not going to be needed anymore. So that's really powerful, I think, when we say that to them. It's like, wait, you don't want my money for a membership fee and you're trying to get yourself out of a job? It's like, yes, we want this market to be created. We want companies to be able to have good information to make decisions that work for them and their businesses and that are good for the planet.
Well, it's been so wonderful to talk with you, Taylor. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This has been, we'll leave in good ship shape here.